Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to The Disturbing Truth. Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of human being, people have wondered over the nature of reality. What is this world that we're living in? And are our experiences true? Or are we living in something that's not really real? It's something that's fake. Is it really authentic, this world that we're living in? These are questions that usually appear in the minds of the people since the time of Adam until today. And the question becomes, is there a place that is more real than this world, our reality? Today we'll be going into this topic of this world and the matrix, and this world that is actually created by Iblis, which we have spoken about in previous episodes. So, we know that a lot of people have had these questions happening in their minds, and they're wondering, what is the truth? What is reality? And majority of people think and believe that this world that we live in is a real world, right? But there are a few people that question it, and they wonder, is it really a real world? And the idea is because when you find a newborn, when the newborn is within the womb of the mother, it doesn't have any memory, or like the fetus is within the womb and comes out and becomes a newborn, can't remember really what happened before and what came before, right? And the child is just trying to make sense out of their senses, this new feelings, the touching, the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, it's all new. And they're trying to understand what's going on, and they start wondering, where did they come from, and where are they going? It's like they're in confusion. They have no idea of this world that they just entered. It's so new to them.
Yeah, they're just exploring it.
They're just exploring it, right?
And it's all we know, basically.
It's all we know, because as they start growing up, what happens is they start understanding, okay, my senses are telling me this, and when I'm touching this, when I'm feeling this, I'm understanding that what things mean. And so slowly, the senses is what makes and creates the reality in their minds, in their brains, right? And they start seeing, okay, whatever I see, whatever I feel, whatever I touch, that's what's real. So, for instance, if we're standing at a cliff and you're looking down and you're seeing that you're standing on something high, and you're feeling the wind, and you're feeling like all your senses are telling you that if you're going to jump, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And if you would have ignored your senses, so you'd be like, no, I'm going to jump, nothing's going to happen. And you jump, you're still going to die. So here you see that your senses were actually true. They're telling you you're going to die. It caused a consequence there that was based upon the senses that had become your reality. And so everything else that vanishes or disappears, or something that is like not really tangible, it becomes unreal. You don't believe in it really. So something that fades is not real. Something that your senses cannot see or touch or hear cannot be real, because you cannot perceive it, because it's all that you know. So when you look at, for instance, the dream world, the dream becomes not real because you wake up from it. It's just an imagination. That's what people say, right? It's an imagination. You wake up and it's gone. It disappeared. It doesn't exist. It can't be real, right?
Yeah, so like before I continue from what you said, I would like the viewers to know that this episode specifically is a very disturbing episode, and the nature of reality is something that many prophets and messengers have contemplated over, and not just the prophets and messengers. Many philosophers have contemplated, and everyone, like I myself, I'm sure all of you here, like throughout your life, you've been thinking about, like, really, like we've been bombarded with pop culture, with, like, for example, movies like The Matrix. There are many stories out there of, like, what's beyond? Is this real? Are we in an illusion? Am I living in someone's dream?
You know, there are many people out there in the world who, like, not even from a religious perspective, but they view this world as a matrix, and they view it as like a prison planet where we're all trapped. It's like a soul harvest. Like, there are so many different theories about what this world actually is, like what people have thought, and, you know, many people have actually come to the conclusion that this world is kind of a simulation.
Yeah, exactly. And because there's all these theories and, you know, beliefs out there regarding the nature of reality, it really goes to, it is something that it would be like one of the biggest questions that you would ask someone who is sent by a higher being. who knows the nature of reality, obviously. So it would make sense that the Qaim, the riser, would come with such knowledge.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he has come forth with this knowledge, and I won't forget when he first revealed it. So you was talking about the dream world, right? So they say because we can't perceive it, is it real or is it not? So many prophets have contemplated whether it's real or not, and they do ask themselves. So when I was in, like, for example, they probably had asked themselves, and we've asked ourselves, that when you're in a dream, it just feels so real, right? Yeah. Like for you, it's all you know, it's what you hear, it's you can touch it, you can sense it, you can feel it, you can experience it. So then, but in your world, that whole world is real. But when you wake up, it's like as if it never happened, right? So also that dream world also has an effect in this world. For example, some people do experience, like for example, if they have sexual intercourse in their dream, they wake up as what they call wet dreams. And what does that mean? They wake up and they actually have a physical, like an action has taken place in this world that would have corresponded to that world. Or if somebody gets hurt or hit, and they wake up with a feeling that somebody hurt their arm or something. I myself have personally felt this, where somebody's like poked me at the back, and I wake up from the dream, and I still felt that specific sensation.
And not only that, I think this is something that everyone have felt when you feel like you're falling off a cliff and you just
exactly. You suddenly jerk.
Exactly.
Or when you're a small child, for example, and you have a dream that you go on the toilet and then
they
wet the bed, right?
Yes, exactly. So we have like these philosophers or unknown prophets, such as Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and they actually spoke about this, the world, like the world that's beyond our world, and that for them it's actually more real than the world that we're in right now. So why? Because they concluded that this world is perishable. Why? Because we age, we can die, everything rots here. So it's a temporary world, and a perfect world, meaning it's not really its true original state. It's not in its perfected state, meaning permanent state. It's a temporary world. So if it's a temporary world, then therefore it must be the conclusion would be it's a fake world. It's not a complete world that you would assume a great God would create.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's really it's an amazing topic. It's a very amazing topic.
It's really deep. Yeah, you could go into it in so many different aspects, right?
Yeah.
You know, a really good example of this is Plato's allegory of the cave.
Yeah.
You know, where there's a story about a group of prisoners, and they're imprisoned in this cave. They're chained up to the wall where they can only be faced with a wall and nothing else behind them. And they were born like this. They have no concept of anything else other than this wall. So then there's this group of rulers or whoever is in charge of this cave. They light a fire behind the prisoners, and then they would do like a little puppet show. They would have like people and camels and, whatever it is that they would make noises and stuff. So these prisoners, they believe that this is the real world. The shadows that are cast from this fire with this puppet show, that those shadows are the only thing that they know.
Basically, it's a 2D world that they see, that their reality is now a 2D world, right?
Exactly, and they only see shadows, and that's it. Yeah. So then one of the prisoners, he escapes, and he goes out of the cave, and he gets even blinded because he's seeing sunlight for the first time. So then after his sight recovers, he sees the real world. He sees the clouds. He sees the colors. The shadows didn't have colors. He sees a real camel, a real person walking around, and he sees that everything that he knew was a lie.
Now everything is 3D.
Exactly. Everything that he ever knew was a lie. Even those puppets, he sees them when he escapes from the cave. He sees this was all a lie. This is not a real person. This is not a real
puppets.
Exactly. So he sees it all. So he decides to go back to his brothers, and he tries to tell them, "Hey guys, this is not real. Come. I will help you escape. Come with me. You're being lied to. There's a whole world out there that you don't know about." and they fight him. They fight him, and they are scared. You know, they see that he was blinded, and they get scared. They say, "Wow, this this person has gone mad." You know, we're this is our world. This is the real world.
We want to stay in our comfort. We don't want anything else that is different.
Yeah,
and this was all they'd ever known. Like this was all, like we were saying before, like this was all their senses had ever experienced was the cave. So they couldn't even like fathom like a world outside.
It's also scary. It's the unknown is so terrifying for them. So so this allegory Plato was making is about this world, and he was making this parallel between how people see this world as reality, but then there's always the person who escapes, which is a prophet or a messenger who escapes from the matrix. He wakes up, he becomes enlightened, and he understands the truth, and he goes back for his brothers, and they fight him and even try to kill him because they're so comfortable in this reality. They don't want to wake up. They don't, or they're afraid. You know, so this this is like one of the stories that perfectly explains, you know, the matrix.
But it's a reality that is so difficult to fathom, really. Imagine you being that person standing there. Your whole life is just seeing shadows. So today, imagine this world. You only see how the people are living. This is your reality, and you find out there's something else. You're going to think that the person who's telling you that there's something else, there's a 4D dimension that you don't understand. They're trying to explain to you what a 4D dimension is, and you're just like, what? And you're like thinking that this person must be delusional. This person is insane. I cannot listen to what they're saying.
Yeah, or even like basically all they have is like the 2D image of the like pictures on the cave, so they couldn't even like imagine like the 3D world that we live in. Because, you know, we tend like as human beings to rely on our senses, right? And we trust our senses. So it's hard to like imagine something that we've never experienced with our senses before. So yes, you know, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, basically, they spoke about this world that was being projected on the cave walls, basically. So it was basically a lesser image of the world outside. So this is kind of like an allegory for the world that we're living in compared to the world of true forms, where true images exist, basically, like compared to the images which are on the cave wall. So, you know, the apples and pears, the trees, the human beings that we have in this world, they are basically lesser images of the true apples, the true pears, the true trees, the true human beings that exist in the true world, which is the world of forms, the worlds above this world, right? So we know, and we've gone over this fact, that in the Gnostic text they described that Azazel or Iblis, he is the one who created this world. So he is in control of the material world, the darkness, and he was lent light by God. And so he looked up to the heavenly realms where he saw this world of true forms, and he was inspired by what he saw in these higher realms of light. And he was inspired to create basically an imitation of what he saw. But obviously he's an imperfect creator, so his creation was imperfect. So this is why we have this kind of poor imitation of the real world. So yeah, there's a hadith from the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, which mentioned that when God created the physical world, he actually used an angel to do it. So there's even like hadiths that mention this, and we have the Gnostic text, and this has been verified by Abba al-Sadiq, from his peace, that it was Iblis who created the physical world, and we've done a whole episode on this topic. And he goes, he basically reveals some kind of off-topic information when he's talking about the subject that we actually spoke about before as well. You know, like a father who names his children similar names like Hassan and Hussein. The angels are named similar names like Azrael and Azazel. And the meaning for that is because, you know, they're brothers. So yeah.
This was a huge revelation that he gave us, right?
So Azazel is Iblis, and when he fashions this world, he's making a lesser copy because, like we said, he himself is imperfect. And nothing in this world is original. So human beings, you know, this world is a copy. Iblis copied this world from like the higher realms. It's like an imitation of that world. And even human beings, you know, we are a copy, and nothing we think is original. Actually, it's impossible for us to think of anything that hasn't already been thought of or created by God. So actually, and in the Goal of the Wise, it goes into this in a bit more detail. You know, actually every single thing that human beings can think of is a creation somewhere. So even things
that blew my mind.
Yeah, that really blew my mind. So like even if we look at like fantasy books or like these like different creations, like they do exist somewhere, because the human brain is only capable of dreaming into existence things that have already been brought into existence
makes
by
sense.
God.
Yeah,
because our minds, we don't even use that much of our mind. Like it's such a small percentage that we use of our mind. So how can that like small percentage be able to create something that never ever existed and be like something that you think is unique? That's just insane. That's just like thinking that, believing that is the human's ego trying to think that the human is the best creation on earth, right? Or not even on earth, in the universe. So we have to start humbling ourselves and realize how big this world is and how we cannot not really be so unique. We cannot limit God. He's the one who's created everything. So if you think of something, for sure this thought came from somewhere because it actually exists somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
I mean, after this episode, anyone who understands, what this episode is about and the true nature of reality, I don't think that anyone would ever be able to limit God ever again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at this, Ahl Bayt from the peace have said and spoken a lot about the nature of reality, right? And they did confirm in their hadiths the words of the prophets, right? And of all prophets, what were the prophets saying? They were saying that this world is not worth looking at. So like for God, he doesn't even look at this world. He doesn't even look at this creation because the world is not worth it. Also, their words, Ahl Bayt's word, they confirm that it's only a game. This place is only an illusion. And it's also mentioned in the Quran. And it's not something we should invest in. This world is not something we should invest in. It's a test.
Yeah.
And so what the prophets and messengers have been trying to say this whole time is that do not focus on this world, on this illusion. Focus on the reality, what comes after, the hereafter. And so they gave us some information about the reality in two ways, okay? So one of them is information through the perspective of someone who's inside the matrix, and the other perspective is from outside of the matrix, okay? So from the inside, people have said what? They say, okay, if you're going to look into it from the inside of the matrix, then, okay, God, he teaches us from things from inside it, right? From inside the matrix, that's how you learn. For instance, what is meant here is that if you look at a philosopher, what does a philosopher do? He thinks and he looks and he makes parables with things that are happening inside the matrix. And so, for instance, this is examples. For instance, the earth is so big and it has like a huge patch of land, okay? And on this land, there's grass and moss. And so it's compared to a carpet, because a carpet is grass and grass and moss. So what does the earth become? The earth becomes the carpet, the God's natural carpet. So that's how they draw parallels, right? Another thing is, okay, they look at the human. They see that the human dies, right? And so it becomes dust and it becomes a part of the clay of the earth over time, it becomes soil. And so they draw the parallel and they're like, okay, so earth is like our mother. We come out from it, right? Or like we're like a tree. So we grow and we sprout in the ground and we grow tall and then we die and we go back to earth, right? And so the tree becomes an allegory for a human. And this is interesting because if you look into the books of the interpretation of dreams of the Imams, a tall tree is actually, if you see a tall tree in a dream, it's actually interpreted as being a believer, right? A firm believer. And in the Quran, it also mentions the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and of good and evil. And this tree, we also know from Abu Salah, from his piece, is that it's a human. Yeah. And there's so many narrations and verses from different books that actually backs this up, right? which is a whole different topic, and it's a huge, beautiful topic. And so there are these parallels that are made, from inside the matrix. So you see what you're observing and you make a conclusion. Another thing is like, the grass gets healthy by what? Getting sunlight. And so you draw some other conclusions and how the nature gives you medicines, and you can use different things from nature to cure something. You see this type of plant, it looks like this. Then it must be curing this that looks like that. Well, these type of examples. There's so many things, and I'm sure many people have heard of these type of examples before. So these are so many things that you can see from within the matrix, and it's a perspective of what reality is, but it's limited because it's from within the matrix, right?
Yeah. And I won't forget the day when I was like first revealed this revelation. It was so it's not that it was just it was disturbing, but it was really like mind-blowing, because it was something that would have never crossed your mind, and only a man from God could come with this divine knowledge. That when you hear it, really within you, it made sense. It really made a lot of sense. And also with the context, I was like, brings it with, like, first he starts off with explaining that the Ahlul Bayt, Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, from them his peace, have already spoken about the nature of reality, but like in a way that it's in a subtle way, because at that time people wouldn't have been able to handle it. So there are very famous narrations from Imam Ali. And also, I'll get to the big one later, but I'm going to start with Imam Ali. And many Shias have heard of this one, and it's like you may think that you're a germ, but within you is the entire universe, right? This is a very famous one that many people quote, and people don't understand it. And another thing is where Imam Ali compares the world, that its worth is like, it's not worth even the wing of a mosquito. And it's used a lot as in a sense like, hey, this dunya is not worth it, don't chase it. You know?
And God is not, he even states in Quran, God is not scared of making an example of the wing of the, like a wing of the mosquito, right?
Yeah, so that was the main one. So when I was like wanted to inform us of the nature of reality, he first started off with this verse in the Quran that has left many scholars, and he explained to us it has baffled many scholars. They don't understand why everything. Why would God use this as an example? And that verse is in the Holy Quran, right? And it's in the name of God, the most merciful, the most merciful. So God is not ashamed, as you said, or shy to strike the example of a mosquito, that which is above it. And he said that people don't understand what that means. Why is God not ashamed to use this a mosquito as an example? Like, what does that even mean? What are you trying to say?
There's like no context. It's difficult to
It's just the verse is just there, and they're like, and they have many interpretations.
It even says, that those who are upon knowledge, they're the only ones who are knowledgeable enough to know the meaning of that. And I remember when I first was reading this verse in the Quran, I was like, oh my gosh, am I a disbeliever because I don't understand what this is? And then now, and I asked Allah to reveal it to me, because I want to be a believer. And then now I come here and I watched Abba Sadiq explain this in such an easy way.
Yes, exactly.
So simple, but it's so mind-blowing.
So then he introduced this verse to us. By the way, I'm talking about a real like event that took place like with us in Sweden. This is when we first heard it. And he before he mentioned this verse, and then everyone was just left silent, and they were like, okay, I don't understand, like where is this going? Then he started explaining that if you look at the universe, and there's many paintings about this, many artists talk about it, and many scientists also talk about it, and that is that if you look at the universe closely, it looks like neurons. There's like neurons if you put it together. Like if you can zoom into the eye, it looks like a whole galaxy. It looks like basically something that is part of, like, it's like it's like a body somehow. Like the universe resembles the neurons and the electrons and the everything, the probably everything, even the atom, all of it, the resemblance of it, they are too similar.
Yeah.
So he made us contemplate over that. And then he's like, you notice that, in this world, a creature can give birth to another creature. For example, a woman gives birth to a baby. So a creature comes out of a creature. Or people put creatures within them to eat. Or, the creatures create... Basically, is the concept of like everything is like entwined, and it's possible. This concept, this idea of like this reality of creatures coming out of creatures, or creatures being or living in a creature, because there is a child is living. The fetus is living in a woman, right?
Yeah.
So this concept exists on this earth. So then he made us contemplate. Couldn't you wonder that maybe if the universe looks like a form of a creature or a being? Is that part of our reality, this creature? Are we part of the reality of a creature? And this really blew everyone's mind. Like, it was like a really mind-blowing revelation.
It is really mind-blowing, and it's kind of really hard to comprehend.
And also it makes you really feel, I don't know if it's small, but it's more like, wow, like all the things that you're worried about are really irrelevant.
Yeah, very insignificant.
Very insignificant compared to the big picture. Then he drew us back to the Quranic verse, which is, and Allah is not ashamed or shy to use a mosquito as an example, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, it's because the concept of a being, everything, if you look deeply into the universe, they look like cells. So then he made us like, okay, so first he started off really big. And he was like, think about the universe. Then he went through the universe and like how it looks like. Then he went towards the human being. And he's like, look how the human being looks like. Look at what Imam Mahdi said. He said that the entire universe is within you. Then he went smaller and smaller, which is to what? A cell. Like, let's say a cell on a being, on a creature. And it's like, now in that cell, if you zoom into it, even those cells within that cells, they also have like life. They have like pathways. They have many things going on if you really zoom into it, and that also looks like universe.
Yeah,
and that's fascinating.
So
isn't
if we had the ability to just zoom out so much and look at the universe, it's going to probably look very different from what we could even imagine or comprehend. It looks like, and it's really not what we expected at all.
Exactly. So then he says. And then I remember somebody actually saying, I know what you're trying to say, Father. You're saying we live in a being. And he's like, and they said a human being. And he was like, not even that.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's like, you basically like, you thought big of yourself. He said something, I recall that he said something like, it's a big statement.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, but you just explained that you meant like, cells and everything. He goes, yeah, it is a cell. It is a cell. They're like, oh, I wonder what being it is. Like, everyone's so excited to find out what human being is it. Is it this human being? Is it this type of human being?
Is it a turtle? Just like
and
the creation story.
And somebody brought up the creation stories because there's many creation stories. And he was like, no. Then he brought us back to the Quranic verse. Says, and God is not ashamed to use the example of a mosquito.
Wow.
And I remember people literally, they had their hands on their heads. And they're like, wow, really? No, how? He goes, it's there.
Yeah.
Like Imam, and then he brings it back to Imam Ali, and he said that this world is not even worth the wing of a mosquito, meaning the mosquito's wing has many cells, and you are just a cell on the back of a mosquito.
So this is what this is your universe exists inside of, basically.
Yes.
A cell on the back of a mosquito, which is such a crazy idea.
It is.
Like, I mean, if you like let that sink in. Like, only a Mahdi or a man from God who knows the nature of reality could come with the interpretation of this specific verse. Because this verse, no scholar can interpret it. No, and even if they attempted,
they don't.
It doesn't make any sense. And they don't even attempt to.
There's no way like they can know what that means. And it's so beautiful how Abba Saleh, for him his peace, he brought this into light by using the books as proof. And it's so fascinating because in the end, I mean, it's like telling people you need to humble yourself.
Yeah,
you need to humble yourself, right?
Yeah, it's like you're insignificant, but yet you're significant in a sense. Like that's why Imam Ali's hadith comes back, which is like there is a universe within you because every cell contains a universe. Yet you again humble yourself because you are actually in a cell also at the back of a mosquito. So
because here people probably think, oh, okay, so if we're in the cell at the back of a mosquito, then who cares? Like, we're so insignificant, it doesn't matter. But Allah from his peace said, this hadith that you mentioned, the Imam said you have a whole universe within yourself, because even though we're in a cell on a mosquito, we do have a bunch of cells within us.
Exactly.
And each cell there is a universe. So then it even makes you baffled, because you're like, okay, so
really
now it's even the opposite, you know?
And you know, I was like, I remember when that revelation came and everyone was just like really like, you know, a bit like, oh, taken back. He didn't stop. He was like, okay, and now that mosquito also lives in a different reality. Like if you zoom out, that mosquito also has a universe that it lives in.
Yeah, exactly. Which is going to be a cell.
Yes.
Somewhere.
Which is a cell in another universe. So it just keeps going. And then if you really like let that sink in, it can really drive a person mad for sure. Hence, they make sense why the prophets didn't reveal it in certain time periods.
It's so hard for us to comprehend this kind of idea, because we're like the people in the cave, basically. We're just relying on our senses and what we've been able to see, and it really conflicts with what our senses are showing us. But for sure, you know, we can't trust our own perception and our own senses about things.
Yeah, and when I heard it, I was like, it makes sense. Now it makes sense why, because I remember my mind went back to the first time I'd met him, and I sat with him, and I remember when I was listening to him, I would pick out the grass in front of him as he was talking. I was just, you know, when you're like contemplating on his words and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? And you're picking at the grass, because I'm sitting on the floor outside where there's grass, so I'm picking at it. And he would stop what he's saying, he'd turn towards me and be like, don't do that. Nicely, he said it. Don't do that, because you're harming beings. But I didn't understand what he meant. And in my world, it was just like, of course, you know, the prophet of God, it's nature. You have to respect nature. You can't be hurting. There's probably like an ant there. You're hurting the beings.
But you didn't see the gravity of that.
No, I didn't. But I thought he was just, because of course this is a messenger of God. They're very humble. They care about every creature. It makes sense. Like I know that of the prophets, and he matched that. But later I realized, no, it was greater than that. It was not just because they're humble human beings and they care about all the creatures. It's because no, you're harming universes. It was insane.
Yeah, it's so beautiful how he would bring this to light. Because for me, when I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, that's true, because if you think of an atom and you look at the electrons, how they move in this certain way, they don't just go in a circle, they go in like in different directions, and it creates this movement, right? That you can, if you Google it, you can see a picture. And if you look at our solar system, it's the same thing. They looked, and the science show that the planets are actually moving not in one direction in the same way. They're actually moving in such
it's like a spiral,
right?
Yeah.
And so that made me think, wow, this is such a big similarity. Yeah. And if you contemplate upon Allah's words from His peace, you realize that you cannot deny it. It's there.
Can't, you know, there's no such thing as coincidence. You can't, it doesn't make sense that there would be that similarities. It's just like the scale of things is so hard for our brain to comprehend.
Yeah.
And I think it also brings to light just how big God is. Just how huge and incomprehensible God really is. So it makes the religions that are existing right now, they limit God in such a way
to just this world.
Yes,
and not that.
Even less.
Exactly.
Even they believe themselves to be more intelligent than God. Like for example, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family, not writing a will, for example, or that Prophet Muhammad was illiterate. What kind of ridiculous, assumption is this? And they're teaching people these things, saying that, look at us, we're so educated, when the God that created them, that gives them breath, would have a prophet, a savior of mankind, who knew less than they.
They limit them.
Exactly. The way that they limit God is like, when you find out the truth of the reality, it completely, you can never go back. You can never go back to the scholars.
So we've got like worlds upon worlds upon worlds upwards, and worlds upon worlds upon worlds inwards. Which poses so many questions for the people hearing this, and people have so many questions when they hear it for the first time, obviously, like, how can we travel between these universes? Where are heaven and hell? Are they within the universes? Can we travel upwards? Can we travel inwards? Are there different versions of us in every cell, every universe existing? Are the other worlds identical? You know, there's so many things that you're thinking of when you're trying to imagine
and you
this.
would love to know.
And, you know, actually some of these questions, they have actually been answered by Abu al-Sadiq from him his piece on the Mahdi Has Appeared channel. And some of the answers to these questions, they will be answered as the 27 letters of knowledge that are going to be revealed in the time of the Qiyam as prophesied by the Ahlul Bayt are revealed. You know, all of these questions will be answered. And if you go to the Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel, you can see that some of these questions have actually been answered on this topic. So, yeah, there are beings, basically, when Abu al-Sadiq from his piece is talking about the subject, he explains there are beings who look at our planet or our universe, and it appears to them as real as a dream is to us, basically. So it's not real at all. And it's the perspective, basically, of the Matrix from the eyes of the prison guards when they're walking by, when they have, you know, the people in the cave, basically, who are projecting these images onto the wall of the cave. They have access to the outside of the cave so they can see the inside, which is our Matrix world that we're living in, basically. And from their perspective, this is an illusion. It's a simulation. From the perspective of the prisoners, this is reality because it's all we know, like it's all our senses have perceived. And so these living entities, they have access to the outside. They see it as it is, something like a dream or a virtual reality experience, which is programmed and has an infinite amount of options. And it's not like a random dream, basically. It's like there's an intelligence behind it. There's an architect behind it that is programming it. But it is like a dreamlike state in the sense that it's, you know, a virtual reality experience which is constructed. It's not the reality. And we have these controlling factors, basically, which is like the prison guards who are the controlling factors in Plato's cave. So Imam Ali, from his piece, he said it beautifully when he said, people are asleep and when they die, they wake up. So this is a really key statement.
He was telling them everything back then. They just couldn't comprehend what he was trying to say.
Yeah, he was saying so much. So everything we experience in this reality is false. It is a dream. But obviously, you know, like the dreamer who doesn't know that he's in a dream, the dream feels like reality. The moment we die is the moment we wake up from the illusion. So when we die, it's like waking up from a dream, basically.
Oh no, this is heavy, right?
It is heavy, yeah. You know, because when we're in dreams, we experience a certain reality, basically. But what happens, you know, when we wake up from a dream, does the dream continue? Are the people in the dream a figment of the dreamer's imagination?
These are questions that are very, like, you know, like we should ask ourselves, you know. They're fascinating. And knowing the answers to these things will bring you, this is what it means to draw near to God, you know. Because to draw near to, what did he say in the Quran? I have not created man or jinn except that they worship me. And we learn from Abu Sadiq that worship means to know him, right?
Exactly.
And when you know the answers to such questions, like about the worlds beyond and the dream world and how does everything work, and your knowledge increases in these things, you get to know a little bit more about your creator. And when you get to know a little bit more about your creator, I'm not saying you're going to know everything, but I'm saying as much as your mind can comprehend, at least at this stage.
I think it also brings you closer to being able to realize how much you don't know.
Yes.
If anything, the more that you know, the less you know.
Because we're very dependent on Abu Sadiq from his piece to explain these topics for us. Otherwise, we would just be in the dark.
That's exactly. Yeah. So you know how there's like the religions out there right now. For example, I would just like use Islam as an example. They wouldn't have known anything about God if it wasn't for Prophet Muhammad. Like they are very bold to walk around with the book and know and claim that they know Allah and claim that they know what He wants, and they claim to know that His jurisprudence, and they wouldn't have even known about the word clearly or anything about Him if it wasn't for this man called Muhammad. Same with us.
Yeah, and it's so like when you look at the religions today without all of this like knowledge that's behind them, it's just like it doesn't explain anything. You're just like, it's like, you know, it's just a crust, like as Abu Sadiq from his piece has said, you know, it's just like focus on these like
worship,
outside bits of jurisprudence and this, but it doesn't even make sense. There's no explanation for anything. When you look at these explanations that Abu Sadiq from his piece has provided, they're so substantial. And this is the questions that we've always been wondering about. We've always been wondering, like, what's going on with our dreams? You know, like,
and why haven't they answered them? That's if they were such people of truth, such men of truth, and meaning the scholars, and by the way, all scholars of all the religions, and if they were truly men of truth, they would have answered them, you know, for us. So it clearly means they're not enough. They're not enough, whether they want to be or not. It doesn't matter. their position, their authority is invalid. It's irrelevant.
Definitely.
It doesn't mean anything to us. It's not helping us. It's not drawing us near to God.
They cannot give an answer that is not backed up with something, so they get limited in it, you know. And they can't go further. But Abu Salih, from his piece, he's bringing the knowledge from God.
The scholars, basically, they're like, an example of them is like basically the people who are still in the cave with you, like trying to give you explanations for this, but they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no more ideas than you do. They have no more knowledge than you do. And but they're just like, oh, I'm very knowledgeable.
Actually, a lot of them even know less because they're so stuck in their ways. Like, this is the only way. My doctrine is the only doctrine. They never go outside. You know, they don't take the Prophet Muhammad's advice when he said seek knowledge even if it's in China. They stay with one book and that's it.
And they limit everyone else. So it's as what Alex said is brilliant, actually.
Yes.
That the scholars are like the people chained to the cave walls with you. And they're trying to teach you what's outside, even though they're hidden.
Yeah, they have no better idea than us. And, you know, the Imam of the time, the one with the Holy Spirit, is the one who's been outside of the cave. He's the one who actually understands the reality. He's seen the world of forms. He knows what's going on with us. He understands that this world is an illusion. He can teach us. He can show us the reality that we're living in.
And it has to do it slowly, you know.
It's so important that we listen to him because, you know, otherwise we're going to be trapped in this horrific reality.
And would you want to? Like, wouldn't you? Every person loves the magic of life, you know. Like, they're very. It's like it seems to be in our nature to seek adventure. It seems to be in our nature to be curious. You know, of what's beyond. It's children are like that. They're born like that. They're born very curious. They just want to explore the world. They want to explore what their reality is. And we found that man. You know, we found the man who is the key to the matrix. We found the man who is sent by the one who created the greatest of all, as you want to call them, matrices. And he has those answers. So I think it's insanity. And it makes sense why the hadiths actually say you should crawl on ice to him. It's not because it's like a religious duty, but it's actually it's not even your salvation. It's
for your own sake.
It's for your own sake, really. It's for your real true purpose. It's actually what you actually really desire.
Yeah,
you think you desire the world, but you don't.
Always wanted to know. You know, we always wanted to know these. We always felt uneasy. We always go to our church, to our mosque, to our parents
answers.
when we're little babies. You know, when we're children, we ask our parents a million questions. We want to know everything, and instead of allowing us to know these things and explaining those things to us, they dumb us down. They say, don't ask this is too hard, nobody knows this. When Abba Sadiq, from him is peace, he does the opposite, and he doesn't only teach us, he teaches the world all of these things.
And also from his piece, he did go into this topic a little bit more in depth, and he mentioned a little bit more about deja vu, right?
Exactly, you know, for example, you know, you feel sometimes you walk into a room where you're doing something and you feel so weird. You feel like, wow, I've done this before. I feel like I've been here before. You know, this feeling of deja vu, and it actually can, you know, what it actually means is it's one of those glitches, I suppose. It just means that you probably dreamt it before. You've had a dream about this before and you've forgotten, or maybe you did experience it in your previous incarnation. You know, so this, I think the main point is that this world is not real. It's an illusion. It's like a video game. Like you know, when you put like a VR goggles, you know, on your head, and then you're like flying and you're building all these things, and then as soon as you take them off, you're in the real world. This is kind of how this reality is, and you know, I'm sure we'll dive even deeper into that, and it's mind-blowing and extremely disturbing.
It is.
More to say on this topic, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So today we did go into this disturbing truth about how this world is actually an illusion, and it's not really something that is real, even though we feel that it's real. And Abu Salih, from his piece, is the one that came with this huge revelation. He came with this huge information and reality and the truth, and it's just actually a part of the truth. It's not, he said, this is not really the full truth, right? So this is a part of it. And we're so happy that we could share it today with you, and we're hoping to go into it more in another episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.